like, I was like rolling my eyes, like, what the fuck, man? I mean, don't they enjoy having a nice house? Like, don't they want to help me? That he didn't even have a job, anyways, because he'd been fired from his brother for stealing gold. His brother owns a jewelry fabrication place, and her other brother didn't have a job. So nobody had a job, and my wife wasn't even helping me, and she didn't have a job. I don't even know what she was doing. She was cooking for me, but anyways, I got really drunk off this Pisco stuff at my going away party, and it kind of, I guess all those 4 months of frustrations just boiled up in me, and I got like really, I just snapped. I lost my shit. And next thing, I got really drunk though. I was like totally hammered. Anyways, next thing I know, I'm like standing above my wife's mom, like screaming at her, like, how the fuck could you have kicked your own husband out of your house? And then I go in her bedroom and I pull an art thing of Pablo Neruda off the wall because I thought it was her father, my wife's father. I go, how could you kick him out of the house? And they're like, oh, that's not him, that's Pablo Neruda. I was like, really? So it looked just like Pablo Neruda. But it was made by my wife's dad, who was like a really talented artist. Like it was great. And then he did one of her. And this is what she says. She says that he made it. But it looks exactly like her. It's like this guy is like the most talented artist I've ever seen. And as far as woodwork carving, it was amazing. And also a great singer. I mean, this guy, whew, he was crazy, but he was a great artist. Anyways, so then like her brother's like, okay, well, you and me, let's go drink some beers back in your house. And so we go back there. But before that, it was like, yo, how'd you kick your dad? How could you kick your man out of the house? And you're a fucking crackhead loser. What the fuck? You don't even help me. And then I go, you know what? I'm going to help you. If you don't even have a job, I'm going to help you open up your own business. I have a cool idea for you. You can knock on people's doors and try and sell them numbers for their houses. Because none of the houses had numbers on them, and it could make it hard for people to find the houses. You know, like when people call the cops, it takes like an hour for the cops to get there because they can't find where the house is. Like that actually happened with me once. It took them like an hour because they couldn't find the house. So, but he's like, no, I don't need your help. So then I take him back to our house, and we're drinking a beer, and I go again, and I go, yeah, man, no, seriously, if you don't have a job, I'm going to help you get your own job. Open up your own business, putting numbers on houses. And he goes, no, man, I don't need your help. And I go, but you're a fucking crackhead, dude. You need my help. And then so he starts like screaming at me. So that, like, I went nuts at that point. So I punched him in the face. I must have been like thinking that I wanted to do that beforehand because I just did it instinctually. And then I lunged at him and I tried to squeeze his esophagus shut, but he had his head down. So all I was doing really was just scratching him. And then, like, I guess my wife and, like, his wife somehow, like, separate me from him. And then next thing I know, like, her mother's there. And so there's all three of them are pinning me up against the wall. And then she's like, you know, don't act like this in my house or something like this. And I was like, what? Your house? This is my house, not your house. So then I grab her, my mother-in-law, throw her up against the refrigerator. I'm like, you know, this is my house. And then I think she's like attacks me and like starts pulling hair, like pulls a clump of hair out of my head. She's like, you're kicked out. So I was like, okay. So I'm like coming around like looking for my passport. And then by now her brother, he had come to, and he's like, so then they're like, they're both screaming at me together, like at the top of their lungs. So I closed the door, but then they kicked the door in. They're all screaming at me. So I like close the door, and then we end up going to sleep. And then the next day, I hear her mom out there like, he's kicked out. Get him kicked out right now. I'm gonna have, your brother come over and kick him out. And she told me, my wife told me not to go out and argue. So I was just kind of inside watching. And then we went out, but that was like 3 days before I was gonna fly to America. So we like, I guess spent a couple of days like riding bikes around town looking for an apartment to rent because supposedly I was kicked out. And then I flew to America, and I was in America for 2.5 months. I hadn't been there for 4 years, 2.5 months, and got a job as a night riders, like driving drunk people home in their own cars for 2.5 months, saving money. It was cool to have a break. And then I came home. Oh yeah, but while I was in America, I was talking to her, and she was saying that her family was like really poor and had was having money problems, like didn't have enough money to like eat, because like he'd I guess hadn't gotten a job yet, and the father wasn't living there, so there was nobody providing any money because the father was a mechanic, and if she could she was starving to death, so could I send her my credit card? So I sent her my credit card, but I was stupid and I didn't put a limit on it, like $100, $200 limit, just to get enough money. So she ends up spending like $600 of my money, and I get back there, and she needed the money, I guess, because her mom wanted to open up a business selling hamburgers, so she went and bought the fixins for hamburgers, but like $100 worth of hamburger fixings, but instead of selling even a single hamburger, they just ate all of the fixings, and then my wife racked up like $100 or $200 bills at 2 different department stores buying stuff for her kid, and she bought a car. My idea, what we agreed on, was that we were going to use the money, the extra, as soon as I had the money, we were going to pay somebody to fix the Mini. I wanted the Mini to work, but she had given up on this other Mini mechanic because he wasn't going to put the engine together. He said it was going to cost like a lot more, like $500 just to put the engine together, when he originally said it wouldn't cost that much. So she just gave up on him and gave up on the car completely. So she bought another car, a Renault, for like, I don't know how much. So I come back and she picks me up in the airport in this Renault. And then she's like, oh yeah, this is our car, by the way. I'm like, what? What about the Mini? But anyways, we had a car that was working, so I thought that was actually kind of cool. So, but I guess I heard later that all of her friends were telling her and all of her family was telling her, was convinced that I wasn't going to come home, that I was going to stay in America. And like, come to think of it, that actually would have been a really sensical thing for me to do. Probably any normal person would have done that, but I was kind of, I don't know, I came back for another go because I wanted to teach English for myself, and I hadn't really been totally successful doing that. Well, plus, I was married. So I come back, and I made a website for teaching English, and I put an ad in the newspaper, and so people would call me, and I managed hooking myself up with work, and I had plenty of work. It was awesome. Finally, 3 years after getting there, I'm working for myself and not having to worry about working for somebody else. It's really hard to teach for yourself there and actually have lots of work because it's so competitive. And the government, most people when they take classes, it's just got companies, and the government pays for pretty much for most of the money that the class costs. So you can really only teach English if you teach privately with individual people, and not a whole lot of people do that. And so I was mainly doing that, just writing out to people's houses. I did have a couple of companies that would pay me. I don't know why they didn't use Sensei, the government. Maybe they didn't know about it or didn't qualify or something. But so I did that for 2 more years. I was in Chile, Santiago, doing that. And that's when I really started, I think, doing more mountain bike trips with my buddy Tony on the weekends. We did one where we had a lot of cool mountain bike trips. I think I'm out of time. I think I'll talk about that later, though. I'm sweating my ass off in here.